This is working okay. May 25th, 2004. And we're in the home of Selma and Bob Mehrman in Beverly, Massachusetts. And I'll start. I just ask you to talk a little bit about your family background, your parents, grandparents, where they came from, how they ended up in New Hampshire, and so on.
Actually, my mother and father were living in New York City, and they moved up to Ashland in 1922. And at that time, my grandmother, I'll show you a picture, my grandmother and my grandfather, my maternal grandparents, were already living in Laconia, along with their son and daughter-in-law. And I'm showing you a picture there of their 25th wedding anniversary, which would have been, I guess, in 1940.
And this picture was taken...
Nobody ever writes anything down. Oh, 1941. Yeah.
In
the shoal.
Uh-huh.
And it's not a synagogue. Well, yeah, it is, but more, they called it a shoal. And everything was in Hebrew then. I think that was a rabbi and his wife. Yes. Wonderful. You go to temple, you didn't understand a thing. Men sat on one side, women on the other. And they later changed that. And I think when you meet with Mr. Selig, his family was a founding member also of this temple. But this was at the temple. Can't remember the name of it. Anyway, and that was in 1941. So this is the family came. My parents lived in Ashland, which was, again, Plymouth and Ashland are in the central part of New Hampshire, and about 30 miles from Laconia. So my father and mother had, they rented an apartment in this, it was a store and then a regular two-family house next door, right next door to it. Upstairs was an apartment that they had. Later, they bought the whole thing, but meanwhile, in 1922, they set up a dry goods store. And my mother was in the store. My father bought a horse, and he would pedal. Somewhere in these pictures, I've got a picture of him and his horse. He would pedal up through, and if you think about 1922, horse and a wagon going from Ashland, New Hampshire, and you just look at old Route 3, up until Lincoln, where Loon Mountain is. Yeah. And he would do a lot of peddling with the dry goods. At one point or another, he met a man called Sherm Adams, who later was part of President Eisenhower's cabinet. And he worked for a paper mill up in Lincoln. And in those days, the mills owned the towns. And he used to come down to my father's store in Ashland and buy a lot of stuff in Plymouth. They later moved to Plymouth, opened another store. And so it was interesting that he went through all that. But as he saved his money, he opened a small store in I don't know, it was 35 or 36. I'd have to look that up. But in the mid-30s, Richardson's department store, small place, which they had a fire, and there was a gas station next door which had a fire. I remember that. And then they rebuilt on that spot, 1937, the new building that's still standing there. We just sold it to the state because they're going to put a road through, eminent domain. So anyway, so 1937, my father had the store in Plymouth. My mother still had the store in Ashland. So that's my brothers and I lived in Ashland. And somewhere in these pictures I want to show you today, my brothers always talk about, later my father bought a closed panel truck. And my father loved taking rides and going on Sundays. They go for picnics, so they go out, have a little something. And my brothers would say they would get in the back of this closed thing, my mother and father in the front, and they would ride up to the White Mountains. And my brother Julius said he never knew what anything looked like from the time he got in there in Ashland, New Hampshire, until they got out in Lincoln. So and then
sitting in the dark.
it's sitting right in the dark or whatever. Maybe it's a little window, but that's what that happened. That was in the 20s, 30s, and then that continued the same way. You know, we'd in the interim there were various people that moved in. I have pictures here of Dr. Kaplan and his wife Sarah, Jewish doctor. Now this was, and I was going to tell you a story my mother told me when they opened up the store in 1922, somewhere in the I don't know exactly what month, and my father had gone off to do his peddling. Nobody came in the store for 2 or 3 days, and one day a woman walked in, and she walked in and she looked at my mother, and she walked all the way around my mother, and she looked at her and she says, "I don't see any horns." And my mother says, "What?" Yes. Now, that was only one thing that as I was growing up that I realized when sometimes relatives from New York would come up to visit, we'd take them up to the mountains. Now we're talking 38, 39. And very often at the Indian Head, which is still there, the cabins, we'd go around and all of a sudden you look and in the window would be Gentiles only. And in many places, and later on, there was a movie called, or a book called Gentleman's Agreement, something to do with this same subject. You know,
Gregory Peck?
yeah, Gregory Peck. And Gentiles only, no Jews allowed. This was very prevalent up there, which I guess gave rise to my feelings, you know, that I still have today about New Hampshire. But anyway, very narrow-minded place. But my parents, you know, they enjoyed it. They loved the countryside, and it was lovely, you know, the town.
What had drawn them to? I mean, what had
Why
drawn them to New
initially?
Hampshire in the first place?
My younger brother Erwin was sort of sickly. He had problems with, I guess maybe at that time I don't know if they even knew that there was pollution or whatever, and I think he had a problem. I suspect it now that he would probably be called lactose intolerant. But then those days he had problems with the milk and this, that, and the other. And the doctor said, you know, maybe take him up to New Hampshire for the summer or something, and it might be better for him. So my mother's brother was already living there, plus her mother and father. I don't know the story of how they got there, what year, but some of my uncles were born in Laconia, and my cousin Laurie might be able to help you more on that. So they went there, and they liked it so much, they looked around, and they took a ride up into what was then Ashland, and that's where they decided to settle. Because my Uncle Kelly was already in business. He had an Army and Navy store. Mm-hmm. So that's how they arrived there.
Had your parents been born in New York City? Or
No, my father was born in Minsk. In about 18, see, he came to this country in 1902. Mm-hmm. Is that too close? No?
No, I got it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm watching these levels. So.
1902, he arrived. He was 16 years old. And actually, he had was supposedly ready for the Russian army, you know, the conscription. And he didn't want to join. And my grandfather didn't want him. Now, his father was still in the country. So what they did is they got some money together, and they paid to have him go by, as he said, a wagon. They would go during the night, and they would hide in barns during the day. And the first time they got to the border near Germany, and the guards are paid to look the other way for just, I guess, so much. And that's when that money, that time is gone. Somebody fell. My father stopped to help this lady, and they caught him. So they sent him back by way of the jails, all the way from, he was only 16 years old. They sent him from one town to another. So at night when they'd arrived, they just threw him in the jail. But when he got to Minsk, they did contact my grandfather, and he came and got my father. And they waited a couple months, and then they did it again. And this time, he had to take his youngest sister. I think she was 8 years old. And you think about a 16-year-old and an 8-year-old going again in these wagons with the hay on top of you and sleeping in barns. And I guess a few incidences where they fell, the the wagon fell over and he had to rescue his sister from a pond, but they made it. And they made it onto the boat. And when they got to the United States in 1902, in those days, you just didn't walk into the United States. you had to have somebody that was ready to sponsor you. And his uncle had a factory in the Lower East Side. And so he already had a job because he was a good tailor. So he worked there. And so he lived there. My mother came to this country in 1912. And she was born in another little town, but still in White Russia. Now would be called, I forgot. Sometimes when I meet some of the Russian ladies in town, they tell me, I forgot what they call it, but things have changed so much. But, so I think they met probably in the Lower East Side, probably in the factory. And they were married in 1916. So they lived in New York City until they came up to New Hampshire.
In the Lower East Side area
somewhere. And their relatives were there. So when they moved, my aunt, my uncle, her mother and father and her brother, then her sister came to Laconia, another sister, and most of the brothers stayed in New York City, in parts of Brooklyn and various parts. So then in 1940 we moved to Plymouth, big town Plymouth, 2,000 people rather than 1,000, but it was 6 miles away, big city. I didn't go out of the house for almost a week. Thought I'd get lost. You had to see Ashland. It was like you walk up, really like right out of a book. You walk up the street and there's the grocery store, and next door was the movie theater. It was cool. So, and it's up near the lakes, so that was good. And my parents lived there, and in 1941, when Pearl Harbor, my brother had already he had gone into the Army because there was a deal that if you went in voluntarily, you'd only have to serve 1 year. And he went in, I think it was January of 1941, and he was going to get out in 42, January. And so December 7th came, and off he went to New Guinea, So, and then my other brother went in 1942. So my parents then closed up the store in Ashland because they couldn't take care of this. Boys are going, and that's that store was there. My brothers took over after my parents passed on, and then my brothers have just died recently. One died in 2001, and my younger brother died just last year, 2003. But his one son still lives up in Plymouth, and one lives in Derry, New Hampshire. But relatives, different places.
The son who lives in Plymouth, what does he do? Does he still?
No, the store is closed. They closed the store. What he did, he was doing what do you call the inserts for ski boots, and that? It's sort of a.
I don't know what you call it. Yeah.
Anyway, he had a shop. He was a graduate of UVM, and he went back to school and learned the art of oh God, I can't remember that word. But when you want ski boots to fit just perfectly, they have the molds that they make, and you have them specially made for your feet, and then they fit them into the boots or the shoes, whatever. So he's doing rather well doing that.
It's interesting. I guess there are a couple things. One is there are many families, I think like yours, who lived in places like that, but then 1 or 2, 3 generations go by and everybody leaves, and he's still there.
He's still there.
And the other thing that also is just how the whole economy, the New Hampshire. I mean, is it doing something having to do with ski boots? Sounds like just what would fit into New Hampshire
see, my parents,
today.
My parents' shop was men's and women's and children's. Then they gave up the children's, and there was many more. Then my brothers started a ski shop. It was a rather big one, and this was in 1970s, 60s, 70s, and they redid the store, they enlarged it. Where when the store was first built in '37, there was a woman that wanted to open a restaurant. She was a refugee from Germany, and Miss Steuben's restaurant, and so it was built as a restaurant. And then when she left, they took it over and made it enlarge the store. But it was interesting about this is Plymouth rather. You had the people who were refugees coming in, but you also had White Mountain Manufacturing, which is about, I'm going to say, 2 blocks, block and a half up from the store, which was owned by some people from Boston, and they manufactured some of the nicest ski wear. I mean, it was in those days would be considered expensive, and of course Conway was very big, and also in the '30s they had ski trains that used to go up, so that was a very good business, and a lot of Jewish people came up and worked there, and so we had a little nucleus there of Mr. Pasterman and Mr. Scher and all these different Jewish people. So it made a small group. Nothing, believe me, I'm not even sure they'd be a minion, but anyway, it was, and then you had the Jewish dentist from Ashland, and in Meredith there was a couple of my mother's relatives, doctors, and then we had a young man named Shanker who moved up to Plymouth, and he was an eye doctor. So this was, I think, a very interesting thing is a lot of young professionals would look towards an area that a lot of people perhaps didn't want to go. But if you were just starting out, perhaps it was better for you to be up in New Hampshire practicing the medicine or whatever, rather than Boston competing with a lot of other professionals. So it was interesting. And the other thing, there were other places that Lake Talton, which in Pike, New Hampshire, which is an all Jewish. Well, there's Jewish. I don't think the Jews did this, but it was for young people in their 20s, 30s that wanted to go there were different places around in Connecticut also, lodges and places that you go for vacation and to meet Jewish singles, and sometimes couples would go to Lake Talton Club. It was very, very nice. So basically that's, how the family got there and what they did. It was interesting. Mr. Steinman, the store is still there, Steinman's Furniture Company. I think he arrived maybe a little before my father, I'm not sure, but they stayed. Mr. Steinman and Mrs. Steinman are long gone. Their son just died recently. But that was an interesting, as I said, my father told me they came, or Mr. Steinman came by way of Siberia, which you think, for whatever reason, because there were so many things going on in Russia as far as the Cossacks and trying to escape. So I guess you took whatever route you could take to get out of the country. Because the stories my father told about Russia, it was really, I guess brutal. The treatment of like Fiddler on the Roof. That was
since you mentioned it, were there other besides that story about escaping from the army? It was quite a story. Do you remember other
his stories that he would tell us? Yeah. Well, he always was talking about what Russia was, like, and literally the horses and the Cossacks would come in and just run right through it. Could care less about what was going on in town and the shtetl, I guess they call it, and that he used to mention that. Gosh, sometimes you forget half the stories, but it's too bad nobody writes these things down, But he did. He said it was pretty. And the thing also, my father was very active in another thing. When in the 30s, as they saw what Hitler was doing, because I think they still had a lot of relatives, and we were still friendly with Russia at this time. And the people needed help. I can still see big boxes, cardboard boxes that were filled with clothes, and for war relief. And they sent a lot of that over to Russia to help people. And also, in the 30s and late 30s, people that were escaping from Hitler. My parents sponsored some of the people that were brought over from Czechoslovakia. There was one man, he was the prime minister. I remember this. I remember going my father's car, and I believe, if you ever heard of Peterborough, New Hampshire, it's an artist colony. Well, for whatever reason, and whoever these people were involved, they were bringing the refugees sort of like through an underground, and bringing them out of the country and through Boston and up into New Hampshire. So we would go up and visit with these people. And I can see now, they used to come out, there was a big field, and everybody, it was very heartwarming that so the Jews that were up there, my father and mother in particular, would give money to bring people from, and this is, I guess, basically is the only way some of these people ever got out, is that one person or two people would help somebody and bringing people in.
Yeah, and they had to have the backup and the money and so on.
Yeah, and my father told me this story several times. In Ashland, there's a Squam Lake, Big Squam, Little Squam, and the town offered my father, because after a few years they decided he wasn't such a bad person after all, even before he was Jewish. And there was property that came to for sale. Now, Big Squam and Little Squam, to this day in 2004, is a closed place. The only way you're going to get a piece of property if somebody says, I got this for sale. They want to make sure who's going to buy, and okay. They offered my father this lovely piece of property on Little Squam, and this is the way he was brought up, and this is what did they call it? A mitzvah, doing a good deed, a mitzvah. Yeah. And he liked the people of Ashland. He really loved them, and he said it was wonderful. And he said he wanted to buy this piece of property. He said, fine. But when he told them what he was going to do with it, he was going to make a public beach for the people of Ashland. They said, no way. You do that. You can't, because these people were a lot of them from Boston and from wealthy homes and families, and they were real snobs. And they didn't want, the people of Ashland were beneath them. And so, no way, you're not going to have it. Okay. So my father said, no, I don't want it for myself. I would like to, no, that's it. Okay, that was the end of that. A few years went by, and then he was offered another piece of property, another part of the lake, and it was a beautiful piece. And the Little Holland Cabins was on it for years. I haven't been by there many years. I don't know what's up there now. But this is in the 30s. And again, he said, oh, that's wonderful, And 30s or 40s. And he says, again, he said he'd like to buy it. And now everything's going through until he tells them, this is even better. This he's going to give to the town of Ashland. And that, the hair stands up on there. No, you can't have it. And he says, but you're offered, no, you have it for yourself, Louis. If you want to build a camp, you want that and everything. And he thought about it, but my mother said, my Uncle Kelly had a camp outside Laconia, and all she ever saw was my aunt and uncle on the weekends. People would drop by on their way from New York, and it was like you're cooking and cleaning the whole, and it was a pretty big, spot, but geez. Mama said she didn't think so. But my father said, well, if he couldn't give it to the town, he didn't want it. It's funny how $1,500 is probably worth millions now,
Yeah. Huh.
But
well, that speaks. I mean, it really it shows what
yeah,
person he was.
Yeah, and this is basically when my brothers, one, as I say, passed away in 2001. At the oldest one's funeral, there were a lot of people. This is up in Manchester. There's where the Hebrew cemetery is, which I didn't realize was owned by two temples, but that's okay. It's a strange setup. There were people there that stood up and they said, they weren't Jewish. They came from Rumney, New Hampshire, or Warren, or whatever. And they said, when there were times that we didn't have anything, and we would come down, and either whether it's Louis or Mrs. Richardson, they would give my father or my uncle something. And my brother Julius, one thing he said about them, he said, Erwin and Julius, if you needed a suit for some reason, like my father would open up the store on, you get a call, somebody died or somebody needs something, it didn't matter if it was a Sunday, you'd go down. And many times he wouldn't take money because the people were too poor, but they said, when we needed something, whenever you get around to it, whenever you need, you can pay me because they say we want to pay you. He said, yeah, don't worry about it. Whenever you get a chance, don't worry about it. But he said they never made me feel like I was on charity, that we needed to have clothes. We didn't have shoes to go to school. And that's the meaning, the true meaning of you must, to help. But you're taught to help others, So that's, what we were taught, my brothers and I. And you see by seeing how they help the refugees and people coming, and going. So anyway, I wanted to show you a few pictures. I don't know if I can. Sure. Where you go? It's just a picture of Ashland, New Hampshire, 1930s. That's not gonna. And
maybe you could talk a little bit about, since you're showing me this picture, was your home in the center of the village, or was it on the outskirts?
No, this is the bank president lived across the street. This is Route 3, Main Street. I think I have other pictures that show it better. This went right through the town, small town, but we live right downtown because my parents had a store right, there. So that's
but even, I know, for instance, where I live, you can live downtown and you're still out in the country. Did you, and as a family, did you enjoy the advantages of being in a rural area? Did you?
Yeah, the town
gardens and
well,
things like that?
In that place, in Ashland, where it was right downtown, and there was a stone sidewalk out in front. I could see it, but it's hard to describe. It's right on Route 3. When you didn't have anything to do, you just sit there just the front. It was like a veranda type thing, and you'd mark down license plates from all different states. This is a big thing to do in the 30s, So it was really on Route 3. There was no on the side of the house. My mother had a small plot where she had some vegetables, and then we had a back. We had a garage in the back, and my parents did buy never forget this. My brothers wanted a projector. So my parents bought him a projector, and on Saturdays, and they bought him some old, I wish I still had the old movies, silent movies. So my brother Erwin would go out and sell the tickets, I think a penny a piece or something like that. And my brother Julius, the oldest one, was in charge of the projector, and I was the ticket taker. And also, I seated them on the benches. So in the garage, again, the benches, funny how you can remember these. The benches are there, and the white sheet, one of my mother's white sheets, on the back of the garage. And I can see the old Buster Keaton and the ones with Charlie Chaplin. During World War II, she destroyed them because she was told, because of the celluloid, they were combustible, and there was a chance of their catching fire, even though they were in these metal containers. So, for that reason, they were destroyed. But yeah, you learned to enjoy it, and we also would go on picnics, even if it just meant walking down to the ballpark. You'd have to go to Ashland to see. It's changed, but still, you could walk from here to there in 2 minutes, But then we also would take rides up into Campton, and after the store was closed, go up for supper up there on the near the lake or whatever, out on the boat. Yeah, they did enjoy the outdoors. They did take advantage.
Did any of the other Jewish families, did they all pretty much live in town, or did some of them live on the outside of town?
Dr. Kaplan in Ashland lived up on the hill. He had a nice place, but he was in town, yeah. And when I moved so now we moved to Plymouth in 1940. Yeah, the others lived all in town. Yeah. I don't recall anybody living. Just today, I have friends that will live. You get in the car and you go 10 miles outside town. No, that wasn't their way. Because also, if you were a professional, you needed to be close to the city and whoever you were treating or whatever you were doing. Yeah. So, but.
All right. Yeah. I'm sorry to
That's right.
interrupt you.
Now here's a picture of, as I said, 1941 at the temple in Laconia, New Hampshire, and this is my aunt, my Uncle Kelly Alterman, and Etta Alterman, who actually, interesting enough, she married a first cousin. This one, her sister was her mother. You don't do that anymore. But anyway, that's Grandpa and Grandpa. There is this. Don't recognize that young man. I remember him, but I don't. This is Uncle Kelly and Etta's. I think it's Yetta in Yiddish, or Hebrew, and Etta in whatever. Anyway, this is their children here, and my Uncle Joe. That's my mother's sister, and this is also their son and wife. My brother, my cousin
Yes.
Corn, yeah, and there's the Corns and their daughters, and I say my grandma and grandpa. They lived in their own house in Laconia, and when they passed away, 94, 95, it was really independent people. And I say this is what I think believes of the rabbi, and these people I don't. But I think the Gordons, there's my mother and my father.
And these three.
There I am, and my two cousins.
Nice picture.
Well, here with the 1930s haircuts here. And my mother was here, my father.
It's interesting to me. The rabbi is the only. He has the beard.
The Orthodox,
and
yeah.
all the men in here
Clean cut.
are clean cut. So was that pretty much the case that
The
Jews who lived in that town long
I don't.
term,
Yeah, I do not recall any of them.
Yeah.
Would not, for the most part, you wouldn't have seen that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's enough anti-Semitism going on. You try to, and the interesting thing is, not in this family, but my father's side, his sister married a man, and the last name was Sapovitz. Now, his father, his father and four brothers came to the country, their name was actually Gerber. But when they got to Ellis Island, they didn't know how to spell it. So this happened a lot,
Mm-hmm.
They got somebody else, I got a name like it, and the other guy probably worked there, give him a name, whatever. Was that a Polish? Their son, the sons, really did not want to be called Sapovitz. So when they went out in the world, they changed their name to Shepherd. That happened a lot in earlier times. But so there is, and then again, here you have a picture. Oh, again in the 30s, as you can see how people are dressed. It's my mother, my father. Oh, I guess that's me, and his brother. They lived in Long Island.
Your father's brother?
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. I can't very well talk to you about people. I think it's an uncle, but you see, my mother's brother. But then again, since we didn't, why we never see a lot of this. No names. I think I do it together now. Now I do it. There's my brother Erwin Richardson. He's my younger brother. No, this one you got the big, 1940, my mother and father would go to Florida for a few months every year.
In the wintertime?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now here's a picture of the house that we lived in Plymouth.
Mm-hmm.
And this is interesting.
It's like a fairly old house.
Built in 1900.
Oh.
And right side, I see, it says right side of house. Now this is interesting. Indian Head Campgrounds, White Mountains, New Hampshire. Imagine, that had to be look at the car,
Mm-hmm.
1920s.
Yeah.
Now that's little bungalows, 1920s.
Is this a campground that your family?
No,
Would go
that's
to?
the one that when you went up there was Gentiles only.
Oh, that was.
Yeah, Indian Head, yeah. But then again, where it was camping, I don't know, but no,
Yeah.
when they made buildings, yeah. Oh, here's the other side. The house was on a, my house was on a 8th grade. Do you believe the things that you find? This is 1945, my 8th grade, the boys. And so here I am, like, interesting.
So
wall.
these are your,
The
your
kids,
brothers are,
no, my, and I, 45.
Oh, these are your
I was in
classmates?
8th grade.
Now, would any of these other kids have been part of that Jewish community?
No,
or-
no.
Not a
I was
single
the only
one.
Jew in the
Uh-huh.
town, and I was beat up practically every day I went to school. It got to the point where my father used to take me there, and the store was only like a half a block down the hill,
Uh-huh.
but sometimes he had to pick me up. It was really ridiculous.
So that community was really rife with.
Oh yeah, some of these kids. I mean, we're talking. I couldn't stand. I'll tell you the worst time. You grew up where?
I grew up in New York City.
Oh, so you had no problem with Easter. Worst
Right.
time for me. Worst time. I was a Christ killer. And they were taught. Yeah, a lot of it.
Were the other people of the town mostly Yankee or are they French Canadian?
A lot of French Canadian.
Irish?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I think there's some Irish, but there was some Syrian. My best friend was a Syrian. I never could figure out how the Syrians got up there, but that like the Jews, you know.
Uh-huh.
But they were Episcopalian. They were Christians, and so they were French Catholic, and a lot of them fathers worked in the factories. You had down in you had the woolen mills, you had the paper mill, and
These were factories in town or just outside town?
no, mostly in town.
Uh-huh.
In the 30s, I remember one of my friends in Ashland, father worked in the paper mill, which was down the hill from our house in Ashland. And I was there now this is the height of this is the Depression time, when people really didn't have much. The people that worked in the mills. And supper was, you probably never heard of this, and that was their supper. They were going, I had to leave because a piece of bread and butter with some sugar on it, and a lettuce leaf, a little sugar, and something else. I mean, I don't know what these damn paper mills and wool mills paid, but it would remind me of probably what they could try to get away with today also. Oh, don't want to get political. But
Hard to avoid it.
so there's Mom in her when you saw these. Oh, there's me at camp. I was playing a gypsy, 1944, girls' camp. And, oh God, that looks like me again. Oh, yeah, that's what I was trying to tell you. In front of the store, there was this, and the house was on this side. Don't have maybe you'll have a picture of the house store. I have this big, I don't want to bore you with all these pictures, but I
Not
have.
at all. No.
That is, see what it is? It was cement,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was a railing
Mm-hmm.
that you shouldn't fall off there. So again, there's the house. And you see, now these are my brother's buddies in World War II. There's my brother. Oh, here's Selma. Selma Richardson. And probably my brother's car. I think that had a rumble seat. And that was, I think that was on the side of my father's store in Plymouth.
Mm.
I wish I could see the year, but my brother had an old 30. It was in good condition. My mother sold it for $50. He came home 1945. He was, what happened to my? There again is Selma at camp. Oh, here I am. You know, I was telling you about these places that we went to. This was a Banner Lodge, a lodge went to in Connecticut. And there we are. My father in Florida. Oh, girls at UNH.
Did you go to school at UNH?
Yeah,
eventually?
University of New Hampshire, social work. One of my friends. Oh, yeah, God. Bobby. See, some of the Jewish, blonde Hillel, and all that good stuff. But there's somebody I met at this place in, there's one, I forget that. No. What else we have here? Oh, now here, the Fords. It's interesting. This is I think he was the minister. Interesting, my mother kept that.
Oh, in the town.
In the town of Ashland. These are some of this, again, on the beach in Florida. I'm at my uncle's camp. My father, well, he looks like he's having a good time. Gee.
Was that fairly common for people in that community to go to Florida in the wintertime?
No, my parents did, yeah. Yeah, they started in the
They
30s.
were in other words, the neighbors and so on.
No. My neighbors, there are people there that I didn't even know. But no, my parents, when they'd go for a few weeks and somebody in the store would take care of things.
Mm-hmm.
But when my brothers came back, and that would be in the 38, 39, 40, and then, of course, the war came, so they didn't go during the war because you couldn't travel. If you've read about it, we did have rationing and gas rationing and food. And so they started, afterwards they would go for the whole winter, So, here. Now, why that says Richardson's Store, Ashland, New Hampshire, June 13, 1932. I don't know why that says that. Interesting. That's not the store. I'm not showing you pictures. I don't know who's here. Oh, there's my brother. Geez, in his 20s. So there he is. Oh, here is... Now this, I believe, I'm looking at this, hard to read. Her name was Ruth. This was the Jewish family in Plymouth.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my mother saved everything. Look at this. Miss Selma Richardson has a part in the play Lilium, which is to be presented by University of New Hampshire student actors. Interesting.
Do you remember your lines?
No. This is my aunt and uncle from Laconia.
Uh-huh.
And these are... Oh, this is my cousins. My Aunt Becky from Laconia. Her family lived in New York City.
Oh, I was going to ask, did you, since you had relatives in New York, did you visit down there?
Yeah,
we
did. We would go, my parents, I would get car sick, so I didn't go as much as they did. I missed out on the World's Fair.
Did you wish, since you grew up in a small town, did you wish sometimes when you'd go down there, I wish I lived here?
Yes, of course. It was so boring up there. Really. Perfectly honest. I mean, you read a lot. In the winter, my basketball games were the big thing. Skiing, I wasn't that good at skiing, but I'd go down. We had 2 ski slopes not far from my house. So we'd ski over there with my friends. I'd park my skis outside. I'd go in the lodge and I'd drink hot chocolate all afternoon, put my skis on and ski back. That was but we did a lot of sports. We did a lot of walking, and basketball games, and the Grange. That was a big thing, the Grange. And, I belonged to Rainbow Girls. My father, now that was interesting. Somebody questioned, they said, your father was a Mason in the only Jew? Yeah. My mother was an Eastern Star. Father was a Mason. And D. Malay is the boys of the part, and Rainbow Girls is the part for the Eastern Star. It's interesting too because a lot of it is from the New Testament things that you talk about. But
actually, from what I've read, quite a few Jews, even in early times in America, were Masons.
Masons.
That was one of the ways you sort of could
got
get
in. Yeah. But here's a picture of my brother Erwin, who was in the. God, I wish there was. I don't think there's a date on that either. That would be 42, I believe.
Yeah.
This looks like my mother wheeling a carriage. Let me see if I can just. I'm going to go over there and take. Got some bigger picture. Can I? I was going to make. Sitting out there, and there's my niece, who is in North Carolina now. Seems to be more of the same. I just want. See, I don't. It's nice, but I don't know who Nell is. But, oh. Hillel. Well, that's interesting. Oh my gosh, I didn't recognize myself. That's so funny. Oh, my mouton coat. That's what it was. I love
Now
it.
this is at UNH?
Yeah, mouton coat. Great. If it got wet, forget it. Some more. Snapshots. I don't know. I'm not boring you with these.
Not at all. No.
My mother in front of a car, and myself in front of our house. What is that one? Oh, my mother. Yeah. And there I am. I think I was 6 years old there, and that was the movie theater across the way in Ashland.
Uh-huh.
It was sort of a rural. There were more rural towns, but here are the girls in the high school, 8th grade.
Oh, the corresponding picture
yeah.
of the other one. Yeah.
Listen. Wow. Now there it shows, that must be 1920s. It's probably one of the brothers or cousins. Oh. Oh. See. That's nice. My mother's brother, Sam. I've never seen this. He wrote her a note. He died of tuberculosis, but Sam Alterman, he was at sanitarium in Concord, New Hampshire for tuberculosis, but there's a picture somewhere of him here. Oh, that's a cousin. I'm going to just bring on. Can I make a sandwich or something?
Yeah.
Would that
Yeah.
be good? Oh. The one that was in the 25th. Oh gosh, I do wish. They look like sons.
Oh,
of,
they're holding a flag.
They look like sons of Italy to me. Well, I wish I knew. Is there anything on the back? No, I don't think so.
No, it just says the studio.
I'm gonna put that over there. I'll put this here. Joan must have been. Oh God. 40s. Yeah, there's my house.
Oh, no, this is another view of that
Yeah.
same.
Oh, now we're going back to the. See this all over the place. One of my friends, or somebody, the babysat or something. She looks a little older. In Ashland, you see, it was go down by the field, and this is across the street from where I lived in Ashland. Again, 6 years old. My girlfriend. Birthplace of Daniel Webster. Oh, you know something? There's another one.
This is another one that has,
Yeah.
on the back it says
Yeah.
Richelson Store. I think maybe this is where these were postcards that you sold there? Could that be?
I can't remember. Well, our library in Plymouth was where Daniel Webster made his first plea. So I'm trying to figure out why they would have this. Unless he was June 13th, 1932. Isn't that interesting? I have no idea why that is. I haven't seen some of these pictures for years. And there's the cousins from New York.
So they would come up and spend...
Oh, well, they may have stayed with their mother down in Laconia. Now, this was a very interesting place, the Morse Museum in Warren, New Hampshire. As I said, my father loved to take us, we'd go for rides. And later on, as I got older, and I could travel better, we'd go up for a week or two just up into either Maine or New York State or see things. But this was something you could take in the afternoon, Warren, New Hampshire. the husband and wife, the Morses, were big game hunters.
I guess so.
And they, so, and, well, here's somebody out there in the woods taking a walk. I don't know who that is. Somebody sleep on a blanket. Well, and so do you think I'm any better when that's Ray Steinberg, okay? A cousin. And here's my brother's Ashland High School, grade 12. Wonder what year that was. Wow. Okay. Oh, here's a picture, nice. Oh, no name, but you see, cousin. Ben's. Huh.
Oh, from Israel.
Yeah. Do you know something? That's all you had to write there. Let's see, somebody took off once my brother who went by the one, Irwin, one that was in the Coast Guard, the younger one, he used to be called Pookie. Because we had a woman that worked at the house, and she said he was always asking for a cookie. So for some reason, Cookie went to Pookie, and all of a sudden he gets a card one day, and all said Pookie, Ashland, New Hampshire, USA. And they got it, yeah. So that's nice. Yeah,
Like
that's
hyphen, maybe?
yeah, that's old.
Yeah.
And there's my father's sister. And my father's sister lived in on Utica Avenue in Brooklyn. Yeah. And there's I don't that one window for some reason of my father's store in Plymouth. How interesting. It must be, I think it was probably looked like a winter scene. Oh, here I am with my cousin Sandy. She looks bored. Now it's 19, that'd be 19. I was born in 31, so that would be 37. Back here. No, it couldn't be, because that'd be 40. Jeez, I thought we moved in that house in 1940, so I was 9 years old. Seems to me I look, well, I was always short, though. 41. How about that? Jeez, and there I am, 1951, Moodus, Connecticut, horseback riding. I was in college then. That was...
Were you always a horse?
I liked, yeah. Well, I didn't own horses, but I would go horseback riding. Another friend and I, we'd go, there were various places around. And,
Around Plymouth and...
Plymouth and, or Winnipesaukee. And, you know, my father, mother, and I, we get in the car. My father would drive to Laconia, New Hampshire, okay, 30 miles away for ice cream. Just take a ride. You had to do something. So if my father actually grew up in New York City, so you get up to Plymouth, you know, you got to do something. So we took a lot of rides and did a lot of things. So, and there I am. There's another picture in front of my father's house. Oh, I remember her, Dr. Kaplan's little girl. I don't remember her name, but Ellen. Oh my gosh, I hadn't think. Ellen, cute. So we had a small community of Jewish people, you know. There I am. And that would be, again, so I had to be 41, 42, because we're at that house in Plymouth now. Now, here's a very old picture, huh? Of some relative, I would say in his 20s. Oh, here's Miami, boy, what Miami used to look like. Dear Selma, are you a good girl? We will see you soon. Give my regards to Viola and Ruth. These are the people that worked in the store. Actually, 1940, yeah. So she had a live-in because she worked all the time. So we'd have women that just lived in the house and did the cook, just one.
While they were gone?
All the time, until I
uh-huh.
get to about 13.
Oh, I see.
And then my mother, this woman decided that I was a little too old to have somebody in the house all day.
Mhm.
There's my mother and her sister-in-law. Is there a date on that? Well, that looks 20s, right? Oh. This is my dog and I. And these are my cousin Goldman, lived in Peekskill. And my cousin my Aunt Becky's daughter. Let's see if we can get some. See, these are things for my parents. Savannah, Georgia. Now this wouldn't be. One moment, I'm just looking to see if there's a date here. A lot of them, sometimes today you find where they put in the date when they were printed. So these had to be in the 40s, late 30s. Have you ever been to Savannah, Georgia?
Long time ago.
Yeah. We were there this past February. Our grandson's going to college there. My father in the field, all dressed up there. Oh, Fort Bragg. Gee, they were in North Carolina. 1949, 49? 40. These weren't sent, that's why. Oh, Feiner. Now, 1938. Now, Dr. Feiner, he was also from either Boston, New York, and he moved up to Ashland. He was in Ashland. Now, look at this. In 1938, he went to the Panama Canal. That's, you don't see that too much. 38. Garden apartment. Oh, this is where they stayed. Hollywood, Florida. I never even heard of Hollywood, Florida. My parents went there, I'm going to say, in the 40s. And here is, oh God, you've been to the Smithsonian. Look, remember that was like probably one of the few buildings around.
Yeah, now it's surrounded by a million other buildings.
So this wasn't sent, so I don't know. That's all right. I found a couple months ago, nothing to do with this, but we went to, we were in Sicily, and I'm writing all these cards, right? Obviously, I'm finding them now, so I didn't send them. So it was interesting to see my, somebody down in the north end of Boston, I wanted to tell them that we had some wonderful pastry, but it wasn't as good as theirs. But I never sent it. So there are, again, sort of duplicates of things. My father, his sister, oh there. My father, his sister, and his brother. It was nice. Again, the house, Wentworth Street. Look at this, see? This is how they put the signs up, and weren't very sophisticated. A tree, yeah. This is my brother's wife, my sister-in-law, she's now deceased, and my Beverly, my niece, 1946. Now here's my mother, my uncle, and my aunt, and obviously somewhere, oh, it's one of the, that goes on wheels on the boat that goes on wheels. Okay, here's my mother and father, his sister, his brother, and the brother's wife. Again, nothing there, okay? And there's my father. This is the time when you went to the store, you were always dressed. This is see, the suit, tie. This was always the way it was. And even when I lived here, when I go into Boston, you never went into Boston without, I'll take a break here. Yeah. That my father was once, when he was caught the first time trying to escape to the United States and on the border of Russia and Germany. Well, this was actually, Hamburg, Germany. He was caught. They traveled. They sent him back by way of the prisons. And when they finally got back to Minsk, the city of Minsk, where he was from, they got back late at night and they put him in the local jail. Now, it was late and he couldn't see anything It was the general prison population. And he said that when he awoke the next morning, if he even slept, I don't know, he saw all these men with manacles around their wrists and like tied down to their, they could hardly walk because they were chained around the ankles too. And they slept on wooden platforms covered with straw. So I guess it was a little above the ground. And he said they were just like platforms and then something in the back. And that's what the prisoners had to sleep on. And then the next attempt at freedom was made several weeks later. His 8-year-old sister, Ray, traveled with him. They took a ship to the United States, arriving at Ellis Island in 1902. He had an uncle who owned a clothing factory on the Lower East Side of New York who sponsored him and his sister. He worked as a tailor in his uncle's factory. Okay. And Frida Altman, my mother, came over with her parents. So my mother's father, Louis Altman, so I have a cousin in Florida who always keeps me up to date on the Altman family, which you see some of them drop the ER, so you have Robert Altman, and then you have Altman Express, and it's interesting, the Altmans, everybody's related, but they don't know each other, and I'm sure the Hobermans are the same.
Yeah.
And then my grandmother was a Kalmanovich. Now, Kalmanovich, they changed their name. Some of them changed their name. And my cousin, Fern Kamen, who is, I think maybe Sarah, her mother was part of the Kamens, were part of this. They changed their name to Kamen. But also Kay, which turned out to be another cousin who owned the Russian tea room. I never got there, and I never knew of this till a few years ago. So she explained that the Russian tea room was owned by, yes, I had never been. She says, but, that was owned by a Kalmanovich. But that family changed it to K, which a lot of them did, Yeah. And then there were the Rogovans, and there's opera singers. Jean Pierce was part of that family, so it was interesting. But my grandparents, my mother's parents, were married in Russia, and they immigrated at the same time with the whole family. My mother was born in a small village in the state of Minsk on November 11th, 1897. There's not much known about their life in Minsk, why they left. In 1912, they immigrated to America. She worked with they were young. I say they were first cousins. Unfortunately, a lot of the kids they had cancer, all of them. So there you find a gene that is dominant, I guess, would you say, that are predisposed to it anyway. You have so many pictures and no names. Cousins from Brooklyn, New York. Again, Laconia. I don't know what relative that is. And here we have, now there's a Jewish couple that lived in Plymouth. He worked in remember I said to you it was the factory, the White Mountain Manufacturing?
Yeah, the ski.
Yeah, they made all the ski equipment. Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Pastman. And then they moved and then they closed the factory. They moved to...
So he was one of the owners of the factory?
No, he was a worker.
Oh, he worked there.
Yeah. I don't remember the name of the guys who owned it. There's my father in Miami Beach, 1940. Oh, here's my mom dressed up with a hat. I think she got a hat on. See, you had to have your gloves. Wherever you're going, I don't know. Oh, some friends, cousins. Oh, here's gosh, this one's old. 1943, my mother's brother, uncle, my father, and they were having a good time. They met my brother in New York City. Some club there. And here's another card. Miami Beach. Well, Miami Beach has changed since 1940, hasn't it? Oh, there's Washington, D.C. Somebody in a carriage. No. Oh, here I am with my mother, and I think my cousin Millie. God, that's a little picture. So here is, across the street was a factory that made baseballs and gloves, Draper Manufacturing.
Oh, and this is
My father's
in the-
store. Yeah, so they
Ah.
took a picture.
yeah.
You know, but that was interesting that was, look at that. Who in the world? Oh, that's nice, my father. Here we have a little card from my father. Sentimental. Okay. No, this is not, I saw, large Jewish family here, but I don't know who these, oh, my Aunt Becky and her daughters, and my uncle who died. I was trying to find something, I know somewhere along the line there's a picture, oh, that's me, a picture of my father, mother, in that, going up that old truck.
Mm-hmm.
That's what there's one around, but some, Did you live in the city?
Yep, I lived in the West Village, not far from Washington Square Park.
Because Bobby was born in New York City, and his family still lives in my niece on the, I guess, the west side, east side, whatever. I know nothing about New York. We're going for a family, same show, and there we have my uncle and his wife, their 50th anniversary. Oh no, this is a wedding. Sorry.
Somebody's
Got
wedding,
yeah, Beulah and Mo getting married, Grandma and Grandpa, and her brother and wife, Ruthie, her sister, and her brother. Oh, look at this, a little half asleep there.
Was the shul there when you first moved up there? Was there already a
No, I think
synagogue?
my grandfather, well, I'm not sure how much my grandfather and my Kelly's name is there, but I think Mr. Selig, his family, the small group of people, they were very instrumental. And he'll tell you the story how this started.
Yeah.
When I grew up, I remember this, and it was today. It's been done over, but it was very, I guess, sparse is the word. It was not like you see temples say. It was something that the basics, right?
Was it
Okay.
in a building that had been built for that purpose?
Yes,
Or-
yeah. I think maybe early on, there's that cousin. Early on, it had been, they may have had it in another place. Because I remember when I went up a couple of times this past year to whether it was, the funerals or whatever it was, and we had some things, my cousin Lori, I'm going to send you her, get in touch with.
Yeah.
We had some things there, and I guess it's, guess it's where the rabbi's old house used to be. From what I can remember, because I hadn't been back in years, the rabbi's house was torn down. And Mr. Seelig will explain all that to you. And they built an addition, You think about these people, all these Jewish people going up Laconia, and my cousin Fern, who we can't get in touch with, told me the story last week, or 2 weeks ago when I saw her, that her father and or her grandfather went there in the early 1900s. So I think they may have come over in the 1800s. So, and then they heard about factories being built. And I think they had money, then they made even more money when they started manufacturing. But that I don't really know.
Yeah.
She could probably...
So the factories were of interest because they were the retailers that sold to
Yeah,
the
all these, a
workers.
lot of them were manufacturers too. So you had people like, if Selig's family was into that, one of them started a furniture company, selling furniture. But there's a lot of, manufacturing in Manchester, in Lawrence, have you read about that?
Yeah.
And, of course, Lowell Mills and all. But there were also small places like, there's a woolen mill in Ashland, which was not owned by any Jews, but there were other places in later years, Jewish, well, some of them were from Boston. They owned this property up in East Oshkosh. They'd be making material or whatever. But it's like that group from Boston, the Jewish people who owned the White Mountain Manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
But they had these wonderful tailors and everything that were there. I guess they would design it in Boston, and the cloth would come up, and they would make these really. If you ever seen an old Sonia Henney movie or something, like the old-fashioned ski outfits, but with real class, and that would have been considered, pricey in those days. That's what they. That's where a lot of the Jews came through, because they were. They had a craft, for lack of a better word. I mean, most of the people that came knew they were literate. They knew they could sew, they could do. They always had a craft of some sort, or whatever, an artist or whatever. So when they came to this country, they were doing things, and. That's how a lot of them, I think, gravitated towards the country, and maybe also if they didn't particularly like the crowdedness of the city, So this is my high school junior ball, junior. Oh, we saw this. Okay, which way am I going here?
I think that's the.
Okay, we have. Oh, it's a flood up in. Lower interval between Plymouth and Ashland, March 20th, 1936. It used to get flooded a lot. Oh, and here's another one, 1927, in Plymouth. The Pemigewasset River. You've probably heard of the Pemigewasset River.
Mm-hmm. Comes down from the White Mountains?
Yeah. Right behind the store my parents had. Now, yes, that's an old picture. Oh. How interesting. I don't know what this looks like. Chicago. But anyway, that's my mother. I have no idea when they're. Here's the Jewish dentist I spoke of, Dr. Kaplan, and my mother and my father.
Oh.
They're going hunting.
Oh, tell me about that. So what would they hunt for?
Deer.
Uh-huh.
They were probably hunting deer. I doubt. But they would go out, and Dr. Kaplan had his practice in Ashland. And I know that I used to, when we lived in Ashland, I used to go up to his office, and then later on too. They used to go out hunting. But see, now he was very young when he came to Ashland, so my parents, they all took him, all Steinmans and the Richardsons, and everybody would take everybody under the wing, and to help them along and introduce them, and so they would meet people, And
now,
that
was
the way.
that something like hunting? Was that something? I mean,
It's unusual.
I doubt they would do that in Russia, right? So
Right.
they came over and they kind of.
Yeah, so they learned that from.
the people
Papa used to
around.
go out every fall, right? He didn't want to catch anything, and I think if he ever caught anything, he'd give it to somebody else. But I guess he enjoyed that. And so this is interesting. I look, my father looks so young. He was probably younger than I am now, I'm sure. But there's my mother and father. They're having a discussion about something. My brother took the picture. But again, always, we're taking pictures like your father, always dressed with shirt, tie. Would you mind making a little coffee, sweetie? I don't know what year that was.
If you're talking about Jewish stuff, would you prefer ham or
Do you want to say you want to give you salami?
salami or turkey?
He wants to give you a sandwich. Is that all right?
Oh, what was the third?
Ham, turkey, salami.
I guess I'll try the turkey.
Okay.
Thanks. That's very kind of you.
All right, we're good.
I got it.
Oh, you're going to make it?
Mustard?
Mustard.
Sure.
Mustard or
would be
mayonnaise?
great. Yeah, mustard.
Mustard.
Thank you.
Selma, what do you want?
Mustard. There's no calories.
Thanks a lot.
Ethel Richardson. Do I know who she is? Wow. There's an oldie. Oh, there's a... Now that's going to be taped. What we're having for lunch? Yeah.
Well,
Oh, look at this. Miss May. Oh, you know what this is? 1906. This is a card. You know how you pick up cards? You must go down to sometimes to a flea. They sell old books and stuff. Here is someone who sent, that's Grace, and she sent her a picture. And on the other side is the year and who it was sent to. Oh, Pete's sakes, this is a woman, friend of the family. She became a nurse. Huh. See, my family, they really got into that whole thing. They were very... now here, I've spoken of, this is down in Florida, Mr. Steinman, the one who came from Russia through Siberia, and his son who just died a few months ago. Could have told you a lot. Man. And this is friends, and that's my father in Florida. And there is, look at this, World War. There's the, now let's see, Rabinowitz, Pulaski Street, Brooklyn. So we have something there. That's World War One, huh? Here's somebody's... Oh, I know. Somebody that worked in the store, my goodness. Somebody that worked up in the store, my father, 1943. And there's my uncle. Again, people I don't know, but no date. Thank you, Robert, for my niece.
Thanks very much.
Well, he doesn't mind. That way we can just look at my niece, 1940s, 50s. Now look at those. I don't know who that. Oh, wait.
I think it tells you.
Two girls are the biggest dopes in the whole world. Wait a minute. Oh, my mother evidently. These two girls are the biggest dopes in the whole world, and they are something black, like whatever. Obviously, she didn't like them. That's unusual for my mother to do that. There's again Miami Beach. See how they dressed? Quebec, okay. You been to Quebec?
No.
You haven't been to Quebec?
No.
How old are your kids?
12 and 9.
Oh, see that they like they go on
Good
trips.
age.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see things, go places, do things.
I have a question for you. Your parents obviously spoke Yiddish. Is that the language that was spoken at home?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they
when-
had English. They spoke English, Russian, Yiddish, and some Polish.
Uh-huh.
And of course, there's a lot of Polish immigrants working up in the mills up in Lincoln. And what would happen in 30s and 40s? But I knew only the 40s when I was there. All the farmers and the people from the factories would come in on Saturdays. The store was open till 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. And they'd come in and they would do their shopping, whatever they needed. It could be the hardware store, a grocery store, and clothing store. And my brother was telling my father also that there's, like saloons or what we call saloon type places. And very often, people, they got paid, like, some of them only got paid once a month. Okay? They'd come in with a bundle of cash. And a couple of them would come in and say to my father, here, we hold this for me, and if I come back and ask for more, don't give it to me. So, okay, so...
And they could rely on him to not...
So Julia is telling the story, and Erwin told me the story. This one guy came in one night. He'd come in early in the day, he came back, and he wanted some money. And my father said, no, you had 50, or whatever, 20. Yeah, but I want more. No, you're not going to have. I want more. It's my money. He said, that's right. And you asked me to look out for it. That's all you're going to get. And this is the rapport that he had with the, you could say, the goyim, if you will. They loved him. I mean, he could be tough, but he also was a humanitarian. And he, as I told you the story, how when he was offered property at Little Squam, which is a very lovely spot, twice offered it, that when he told them that he wanted to give it to the town, forget it, and that he would give people if they didn't have the money for their clothes, what they needed, whether it was for a wedding, funeral, to go to school. A lot of these people in the 30s, up until World War II, you know, when that snapped the economy back, I mean, people were down and out. And you need a hand, you know, you get it from them. Because, and I think that things weren't always that great when they first started, and they never forgot where they came from, you know, what people needed, you know. So, and, you know, Papa had I still have his book from when he joined the Amalgamated, and this is like early on, 1912, 13, whatever, when he joined the Union.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very big on that.
ILGW.
Yeah. But it wasn't that then, yeah. There's Workers, Amalgamated Workers of America, whatever. But, and the other thing is very interesting, unless you've studied up on these things, the PM magazine, I don't know if it was kind of politically, it was slanted. Learner, in your history, if you've ever studied, I was socialist, or would you say liberal writers. This came by mail every day from New York. Nobody ever realized, I always laughed at that. We'd read the Globe, and we'd get the local Plymouth Record, but this paper came in, and it influenced me a lot. And also, once we came in, the Forwards, was the Hebrew.
And also sort of socialistic.
Yeah.
Perspective, yeah.
So, but nobody ever really... I never thought of the Forwards because I couldn't read it, so I didn't, you know, it didn't occur to me that what it was, but PM was very interesting. And it's probably where I got my leanings, but anyway, it's interesting that it also was a household where you read a lot and open discussion of all kinds of ideas.
So, and was that a factor in, I mean, did your parents talk about political things at home?
Oh, yeah. And they also talked Yiddish when they didn't want me to understand, you know, always. I don't know if you came from a household where they spoke that. Bobby, you know the story that I told you, my parents spoke Yiddish whenever they didn't want me to know something. And I finally, of course, after a while, you pick things up. It's amazing how you can pick up a language just sitting there and listening long enough. But I never said anything, so I just sat there. And probably a year or so or more, until one day my father said something, and it just cracked me up completely. And they looked at me and said, you understand? And I said, yeah, I do. How long have you understood? Oh, quite a while, you know. So, but I was never good at... Are you trying to serve us? All right, wait a minute. We will take a break here.
Yeah, whenever.
Yeah, all right. He's got the...
Time.
Okay, he's got...
All right.
30s, my oldest brother. Dig the, see the shirt. And, I have I have lots of places, no pictures. Some of the pictures. Oh, all right. Now here is, again, I don't know whose house this is, but these are some of the Jewish people from Ashland, Plymouth. And I don't know. Well, he looks too happy to have it be in a minion. Obviously, it was some kind of a family get-together. My brother, my oldest brother, my younger brother, and there was Dr. Shanker, the eye doctor, and a cousin and an uncle. But I don't know. Let's see.
There's pretty remarkable wallpaper in that room there. Must be.
I wonder whose house that was. Oh, may have been the Steinmans. And there's, again, we've seen this. Wow. My father in his living room. But see, I have to put these back where they belong. And my brother in his Navy, up at my uncle's camp. And here is downtown Ashland. Just to give you an idea, we're talking small town. 40s. My dog. Oh, the two brothers. Looks to me like 1920s, 30s. Some of these pictures are duplicates. Oh, my cousin Marvin. Oh, these you've seen before. No, this is in front of the store, my parents. store in Ashland. That would be 1940s. Haircut. You see that hairdo is sort of like what the Duchess of used to wear. My mother and I, somewhere out in the country there. And again in Ashland. But here's some more pictures I wanted to show you. Oh. Now here again is up at the house of the Dr. Kaplan. Gee, my mother was ahead of her time, slack suits. My father. Oh, this is the dentist. He had a little spread there. He was always trying to fix things up. It's a property.
Mm-hmm.
Probably my father's giving him tips about
So
something.
somewhere on the edge of town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, okay, here's my... She stayed long, my cousin. It was nice to have somebody from New York. It was another world, you know, they come to Plymouth, New Hampshire. She stayed with us. Now she lets turn back the leaves. Leaves. I thought it'd be leaves. Well, whatever. In the Book of Time and reminisce. The good old days. Well, here, the good old days. I don't know what happened to the pictures, but some are here. This is my brother Erwin in the 3rd grade. Oh, there's me.
Oh, these are all
Yeah,
you.
yeah. My brother Erwin. Right. Now what happened to this one? Somebody went. And the cloche. The boys. Here's another picture. Okay. I don't think my father... Oh, there's the restaurant. Did you ever see that? Was it a restaurant when I met you? Here's a house in Ashland, and the picture's all faded. Erwin, Selma. Yeah, Mrs. The lady from... Oh, my dog posing. Oh, that's outside. It's outside Plymouth. My father stops and they take a picture. Here is one of the oldies, goodies. My brothers.
Or you're in a buggy of some
Yeah,
sort?
my father's mother. Yeah, they were not me. My oldest brother, my younger brother. That had to be in the 20s. And there they are again, Grandma and my brother, Erwin. And that looks to be about it, Michael. All right.